All right, all right. We are now live. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending where you're joining us from, or maybe good evening if you're on the other side of the Atlantic. Really excited to be here today. Thank you guys for being here, and just keep in mind that this is recorded. So in case you have to hop off or you missed this opportunity to see the full discussion, you can always join the recording afterwards, and feel free to reach out to get that as well if you don't find it. I'm really excited about today's topic, Terry, because this is something that you and I have talked about in my previous podcast. And I have also gone through my own personal journeys on like nutrition and health and how that impacts not only our health, but also our careers, and the impact I've seen in myself and my focus and productivity, and just really, really being at my top performance across board. And I think it's like the best kept secret that we don't talk about as much as we should. And you're like the best person to talk to about this. So for those of you who are not familiar with myself, I am Elena. I live and breathe talent development. I've been in the field in different capacities for 14 plus years. I love the topics of performance and how can we better engage our team members? How can we as leaders be better at our top performance? Because only then can we have productive teams and higher performing teams. And so, it's a topic that has kind of turned into this research, and haven't implemented a lot of things on myself in terms of like everything that we're going to be talking about. So I'm really, really, really excited to get into this. But Terry, give us a snapshot about yourself and why are you the person that we're talking to about this?
Sure. So I'm Terry Rahman, and I am the owner of Terry Total Health and just solopreneur. But that came out of my own story of being a social worker for over 25 years. And in that process, I realized that I was getting sick. And so I ended up, having a lot of fatigue and anxiety, and it was just kind of through the roof. And when I went to the doctor, I was told that I had an underactive thyroid. I'm like, oh, there's a reason for this. But she's like, well, the medication is the route to go. And I was just not comfortable with that. And so that kind of led me on this journey of like, how can I fix my body? How can I fix my thyroid in order to really help myself here? So I ended up stopping social work after about a year of being diagnosed. And I decided, you know what? I need to really hunker down and really focus in on my health so I can be productive again, because I was kind of a mess, but I really didn't know I was a mess until I started like reading and researching, and it just became like my full-time job of like getting this situated, figuring this out. So that's what kind of led me to be a health coach. And I'm focused in on helping primarily women with digestive issues, struggling with chronic fatigue and anxiety, like I did. Burnout is a big reason for people getting sick. And so being aware of that and how to take care of yourself when you are in a high stress job is extremely important. So there's why
Yeah.
I'm committed now to, like, I live, breathe health. I name myself as a sugar-free warrior because I do not want to put any toxins into my body whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's I don't think I've really appreciated the impact it has on our overall performance, and the spikes of, the sugars up and downs that you have throughout the day. And we always look as professionals, we look for these formulas, these kind of magic pills that will help us feel better and be better. Like, I mean, how many times, anybody who's listening, how many times have you been at work and you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like my brain is just foggy, like it's not work, I feel like it's not, like nothing is happening. And we tend to go for, or when we feel some kind of pain, we tend to go for the medicine or for the quick fixes, but it's just putting a band-aid on a broken leg. Or we're looking to say, okay, maybe I just need a vacation, right? But it's like, you shouldn't be at a point where you are so exhausted and foggy at times and not at your top that you need a vacation. It should, that's not how we were designed to live our lives. And it's not helping you in your career, it's not helping you in your business. And I think just that's why, again, this is so close to my heart, and why I wanted to have this discussion is because it's such a simple, small things that we can do, that we're going to talk about, that everybody can do, everybody can afford. Because I think that's another misconception, Terry, is that
Yeah,
healthcare or eating well or all these things that we talk about, health and wellness, are supposed to be expensive, and they're not,
they're
right?
not.
So let's just kind of, first of all, let's just kind of start with the basics of, before we go into the sugar, because I think that's the people like, I think that's what the walls go up whenever you say don't have any sugar. I think we need to kind of what is the word, like debunk the myth about sugar and how much we actually need versus don't need, and what are some alternative ways to get that
Yeah,
the
for
good
sure.
sugar, I guess. But let's start with just the basics of how do we get here. Let's get like, why is it that, because this is a topic that keeps coming up over and over again, like how did we get here to this point? Like give us a holistic kind of approach to what's going on
Mhm.
in our diets today.
Yeah. So I believe that a lot of people are busy, right? We're busy, 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 and we're just not giving priority to cooking anymore. We're looking for opting for convenience foods over really doing some meal preparation. And that's really one of the driving forces is how I can get the meals on the table and balance my work life and my social life and everything else, that comes into, kids and their activities, and we're doing this kind of thing and we're not prioritizing what's really important anymore, and that is getting back to the basics of hydration, like breathing and eating real food and making time for ourselves to really do the physical activity we need in every day, and we're not doing these what I call the basic pillars of health, which I have 8 basic pillars for health, and they include like the hydration, eating real food, maximizing your sleep and your quality as well as your quantity, exercising, making sure you're aware of your stress triggers, managing your stress, and also making sure you take care of your gut microbiome, making sure you're taking care of your relationships, and also supplementing wisely. So those are like my 8 pillars. But if you even just do the top 4 or 5, you're going to be further along than most people. So
Mm,
it's really makes a big difference. I didn't realize this until I was out of social work and doing this. And I'm like, oh my God, what a difference in how I feel every day. Like I now feel like I have more energy than I did in my 20s, which is like unbelievable because when I was um, working so much, I was always using the weekend to rest, and that really takes a toll on a person's social life, right? And not only to rest, but then that's when I would do my grocery shopping and all the chores that I have to, do over, that I didn't get to over the week because that was the time I was working so much, and it just kind of, and I know this is happening constantly. It's not just me. This is happening across the board. And that's how I believe we get here. We give our priority to our work and we forget what's really, really important.
mm. And I think part of it is because, to your point, we're not prioritizing it, and that's because when we work, we feel like we're being like we feel like we're doing what we should be doing, like we're working, we're there, but we're not working at our top. And when, to your point, when you feel better in your when you're older versus when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, there's an actual thing. Like then you start to prioritize because you see the results. You start
Right.
to feel it and you start to impact it. Like you feel the impact of how you feel and how, like, I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like such an eye opener. And I'll share my experience in a minute, but it's such an eye opener between you don't really even feel, you don't even realize how badly you feel until you feel better. And you're like, wow, you're like, so I got used to this, but actually
Right.
I should be here. And it's
Right.
like, like it's really mind blowing. But I'm,
Mhm.
in theory, right? Like people know this, but what
Mhm.
is it that makes it hard? Like where would one start? I guess I would ask. Like what are the small things that somebody can do today to listening to this? I said, listen, I'm not really ready to make all that change and do all these things Elena is talking about, but
Yeah, yeah.
what is one thing that they can tackle today that will show them, that will hopefully then, add, like building blocks?
Okay. One of the biggest things I think would be to make sure you're hydrated. Give that a priority. We are mostly water. I know it sounds like so basic, but it's so fundamental to health. I was just in a conversation a couple weeks ago with a gentleman who knows better. He has a health coach, and guess what? He took a tumble at the gym because he was dehydrated.
Hmm.
And guess what? He needed stitches for that. Now this is a
Oh
fellow who
gosh.
knows better. Now he knows better, but this is the thing. About 70% of Americans go around mildly dehydrated, number 1, and that leads to all kinds of, issues for them. Number 1, irritability. Number two, chronic fatigue. You're going to have chronic fatigue if you're dehydrated. So it's that simple. And I like to start out with my day. Okay, when you're sleeping at night, you're going to wake up dehydrated. So start your day off with, I always go for 24 to 36 ounces of water to start hydrating. And I put a little bit of sea salt in there, Celtic sea salt, or you can do Baja Gold salt, very quality salt. You don't want the refined salt like the Mortons, for example. But doing that because you really want to hydrate well, getting that water in and that salt into your cells, because that is critical for mental clarity. It helps reduce the toxin loads from your body when you're using the restroom throughout the day. You're eliminating toxins at the same time that come into our body, and we're always like breathing in toxins, eating toxins, those kinds of things. So it's really important. It's also extremely important for proper digestion, because if you're not eliminating well, that's going to cause a whole bunch of effects for you too while you're working, right?
Hmm.
So it's extremely important. Like, that's the starting your day out just by doing that one thing is going to make a huge difference, because you're going to start out hydrated, right? And you can
Yeah.
it's better from there. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Super practical. Everybody has access to water. And I love that you pointed out the electrolytes piece to it, because a lot of people think if I just drink water, but I think the salt or maybe even a little bit of lemon, some people suggest if it's not too acidic for you, right? So talk to
Yes.
me about the like why should we also consider like salt or other minerals? Like what is it about that? Not just water all the time.
Right, because your electrolytes are so important, right? To keep it, and again, those electrolytes need to get into your cells, right? So even putting some mineral trace drops into your water in the morning. I love the idea with lemon because I am a lemon water drinker. I use actually warm water in the morning. So I started out with warm water, which is nice because then if you're doing cold, you have to think about that. It takes energy, right? It takes energy for your body to warm up water inside your body. So to maximize your energy, drink room water temperature or just warmer temperature water, so that you don't have to have that energy now being expended for something like that. You can use your energy toward more, better things. So just keeping that in mind. It's very practical, and whatever you can do. A lot of people don't like water. Okay. I understand that. I was not a
Mhm.
huge water drinker. That's why I resorted to putting lemon in my water or
Yeah.
lime. The electrolytes are, again, super important. Even in the morning, I'll take not only the mineral trace drops, but also magnesium is really important, because our, our bodies go through a lot of stress, right? And magnesium is one of those things that just kind of calms us down and helps us being able to manage whatever it is, like your anxiety. So whether if you have a stressful day, making sure to take a little bit of magnesium can be really helpful too. And also always check with your doctor on that stuff. But there's different kinds of magnesium, and one of the ones that I would recommend for if you're feeling anxious or whatever would be to take magnesium glycinate or biglycinate, and then there's malate for like muscle soreness, and then there's also threonate that goes across the blood-brain barrier, perhaps, and really good for cognitive function.
Mm. So this is going to be real and popular for everybody who drinks coffee. And I tell you first, so like people are just going to be like, okay, I'm done with this conversation of what I'm about to tell you. But what talking
Mm.
about, you mentioned a really important thing, is that when even drinking cold water internally, it takes a lot of energy for your body. It's doing a lot of work to warm up that water, which I've heard many, like a lot of Eastern kind of medicine also preaches, like, listen, drink lukewarm or just warm water. And instead, and I used to not understand. And so this is what I figured out about coffee. And so I recently did a test because I was like, okay, all my blood work is good. Everything is good. And I'm still like, I know I'm not at my peak, right? And I'm a
Yeah,
huge, I mean, like my partner will tell you, I'm addicted about coffee. It used to be a joke that when we travel, he'd be like, did you find your coffee place for the morning? Because I'm not a pleasant person. Listen,
sure.
this was me 2 months ago, like a month and a half ago. And then I did the test, and it basically, my test showed me that coffee for me, coffee and caffeine causes a lot of different things. And part of it is my body takes a lot of energy to process coffee. and it impacts your adrenal gland, which I want you to talk about, because I think people don't understand that adrenal gland, endocrine system impacts how we perform, cognitive function, creativity, all of these things, which was like, I felt like a child learning all of this. But
Yes.
the point being is that, so I stopped coffee. All right. It's been a month and a half. I have more
Good.
energy. I have more
Yes.
energy. I'm not inflamed anymore. I'm more focused. I'm
Mhm.
more productive than ever before. And people who know me, like I was already like Energizer Bunny. So it's
Yeah.
scary that I'm even more productive. I'm like, I don't know what to do with all this energy, knock on wood. But it is crazy to me how much impact this small change has made me. And I even ran a sprint triathlon third day without coffee and was like perfectly fine. So anybody who's listening, like, listen, I can't do that. I can't do without. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm not saying people should quit coffee. I just think you should do a test and make sure that you are operating at the level that's best for your body. For me, that's what it was. But also understand that coffee and caffeine is not good for many people because of the endocrine and adrenal. But you're the expert here, so I'll leave that to you. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. So if you think of the caffeine in coffee, it's a chemical, right? And it's hard on the adrenal glands. So as a result of that, you're going to elicit more cortisol to kind of keep the stress in the body um functioning, as best as it can. So every time we drink coffee, it's like adding a chemical stressor which takes more energy out of your body to process. Not only that, but caffeine is typically hard on the gut lining, especially if you're drinking more than a cup a day. And some people can do coffee with caffeine and they're okay, but it's really like you said, do the test. I thought I was fine with drinking coffee. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's not helping me whatsoever. I realized that I had more anxiety at work when I drank coffee with the caffeine. And then the decaf is difficult to even manage a lot of times because you have to find like the right kind that's processed, the healthiest, the Swiss method, I believe it is. But the caffeine is the issue there, because the other thing that caffeine does, which a lot of people don't realize, is it actually constricts blood flow. So if you're drinking a lot of caffeinated beverages, it's going to restrict your blood flow. And what is it that we want? We want to have blood flow that's optimal, right? So we can really function well. So when you're exercising, for example, your capillaries are dilating and they're, getting that oxygen into your nutrients into your body that way, right? But when we're not or I should say, when we are drinking a caffeinated beverage, it's okay for sometimes for a little bit, but to overdo it is not. For me, I gave up coffee as well because it just was not helpful to me. So I'm like,
Mhm.
yep, this is not worth it. It just makes me more tired. So like you said about even with the water, drinking the warm water, yes. And then I would say if you can limit or even get rid of most of the caffeine, you're going to be doing more good for your body. Because there are some benefits they were saying to drinking coffee. It's kind of like a mixed bag, but it's like, be careful with it because overconsumption will certainly harm your gut lining.
Hmm. And I think a lot of people, in the corporate world, especially, you see this. It's like a thing, right? You come in, everybody comes in with cups of coffee, and then you have two, three throughout the day. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it becomes dangerous. And again, for people who are listening, I just, like somebody who's a like avid coffee lover, I would just urge
Yeah.
you to explore. And what I did was a bioenergetic test, and that's what helped me. It was like a hair and saliva test that helped on identify nutritional sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of other
Mm-hmm.
things. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, and I was like, I was skeptical. I was like, really? I was like, I was like, fine, I'll quit coffee for 2 months. And then I did it out of necessity because my endocrine system, my adrenal, like all these things were like under chronic stress. And that again goes to a point that we don't feel it, Terry. And
Right.
that was the thing for me, is like we don't feel it, but our bodies internally are processing. And what's happening is they're working so hard to do the job, processing all these toxins, all these things that are not good for us. And again, to each his own. So do your own homework, talk to your doctor.
Right.
but it was draining so much energy that my systems, although I'm young and I feel healthy and my systems were chronically stressed. And that was, to me, was an awakening. I was like, oh, and how much of it was had to do with gut, and how,
Right.
again, the inflammation, the digestive system as calmer, so many things that, and I thank you for it, because the first time you and I chatted, you kind of, my ears were tuned to what you were saying. And then I was like, and then I came across this test. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I
Hmm.
was skeptical at first. I was, but
Yeah.
now, having been without it and having made the changes that was suggested as a result of that test, I mean, I'm sold. Really, I feel so much better. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're relying on caffeine to get you through the day, it's kind of like a wake up call. Like that shouldn't have to happen, right? So a lot of people are. They are relying on, like you said, they're having two, three, 4 cups more, of a pot a day. And it's just like, no, that's not going to be helpful for you in the long run. It may be helpful for you in the short run, but not in the long run if you want optimal health and energy. Like you said, it
Yeah.
just kind of wears out your energy. I didn't realize it either until I gave it up. And I'm like, same kind of thing. I felt so much better. And I, like you, love coffee. I still love coffee. I still
Yeah.
love the smell of coffee, but it's not good for me. So, maybe every once in a while, like you have it as a little treat if you want it, but I'm not a big advocate for relying on it. Mm-mm.
So I mean, coffee was a big one, but let coffee, water. I think eliminating coffee, increasing water, and increasing your electrolytes, I think, is
Yes.
essential, especially in this hot weather, at least on the East Coast, that we're having this
Yes.
summer. But let's move on to also just choices of food, because again, one of the things that people say is like, well, I don't have time to eat healthy, or there's this misconception that healthy means time, or it means money, or it means oh, it's not for me, or they just don't know where to start. Some people are just not good cooks. I mean, example A, I
Yeah,
cook very
sure.
simple foods, but where,
Yeah,
like, where does one start when it comes to food? Again, what is practical baby step that somebody can take that say, listen, I'm not ready for all these life-changing things, but what is that one thing that they can be aware of?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think it's a mindset shift. Okay. We have to wrap our heads around what it is to eat. Like what do we want to eat as far as health goes? So it's when I think of it, it's real simple. Eat real food. Eat real whole food is my go-to. And what does that mean? So when you think of eating real whole food, you're going to think of anything that's not processed. I mean, very little foods are not processed these days, but you want to think of vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts, seeds without any extra oils added to them, meats, your eggs, those kinds of those foods without any refined oils. Processed foods are going to deplete your energy, just like the caffeine in coffee. They are not going to help energy. They're going to deplete it because now all the extra stress you're putting on the body, when you think of your refined sugar and carb foods, they are actually turning to sugar in your body, and that will create inflammation in your body, which is going to lead to all kinds of ailments for you down the road. So think simple things when you're going shopping. What vegetables do I like? Buy those. And you can actually, if you like, for example, hummus and baby carrots, that would be great. You got your protein there, your fat, and some vegetable. You can cut up some cucumbers or buy those mini cucumbers. Those are really handy. Having Having real whole food available to you at all times is your best bet. When I was a social worker, I used to bring with me in my lunch all like a yogurt, plain yogurt, right? And then I would, if I wanted the sweetness, I would add a little extra vanilla extract to that. Okay, yummy, right? And then you can add some nuts to that if you want, or some coconut, shredded coconut unsweetened. You can add a couple hard-boiled eggs to your lunch. Having an apple, an orange, banana, all those things. those are easy to do because they don't require a whole lot of time, right? This morning for breakfast, I didn't feel like really making breakfast. So what did I do? I had some Greek yogurt. I added a little bit of shredded coconut in there. I added some pecans. I added a little bit of cacao and a mashed banana. And I actually had some raspberry, so I put that in there too. Delicious. And it will hold me over because I'm getting my fat, I'm getting my protein, and I'm getting some fruit, a little bit of carb, right? But but that's the thing. It doesn't have to be difficult. For in the morning, another great thing to do is using the crock pot. Now, that was my savior, putting your if you like meat, putting the meat in there and the vegetables and having something like that. If you don't eat meat, I like quinoa, making the quinoa in the rice cooker. So simple to do. You make the quinoa just like you do with rice. And if you have the rice cooker, it's so easy, or an Instapot, it can be so easy for that kind of thing. So those are some things to think about. What can I do to make my life as easy as possible, as delicious as possible? So a lot of people think in their head that if I eat healthy, I'm going to be giving up so much. And I'm like, well, what are you going to gain? But what are you going to gain? Do you like to
Mm,
have energy after work to play with your children? Those
mm,
kinds of things. So a lot of people don't have the energy, right? And then they come home and they have to take a nap and they're so tired. So if we just did a little bit of planning, just a little taking, maybe an hour, and just do a little bit of planning of what you like to eat, what can be simple. When you're going shopping, I want you to think about just shopping around the outside perimeters of the store and leave the refined sugars and carbs as much as possible.
mm.
Beans is a great one too for protein, right? Beans and lentils, and they're so easy to prepare. Great sources of protein. You want to stay away from all those refined oils, like the soybean oil and the canola oil and the vegetable oil. There's no vegetables in vegetable oil. so
Yeah.
so it's real, right? It's just stay away. That is such a powerhouse. If you can just eliminate the refined sugars and the refined carbs and these refined oils that are not helping. Not only is it not helping your body, but it's not helping the environment either. Because if you think of all the energy it took to produce all those refined sugars and carb products,
Mm,
like just think about that one time. Like what it took versus when you go to an orchard and you grab the oranges from the orange tree or the apples, and bring them. That's a lot less than getting the corn or the wheat products, harvesting that, putting it in the mill, having it ground up, thinking about what kind of advertising are going to need to sell this, and it's just kind of crazy.
absolutely. I have a funny story. So my boyfriend, he's never
Yeah.
going to listen to this anyway. So he picks and chooses what he listens to. But this one is he's like so over me talking about gut health.
Yeah.
But a funny story, which is so true, and I think people who are listening is like, listen, hummus and carrots sounds great, but my body wants X, Y, and Z. Like my body wants carbs.
Oh,
My body
yes.
wants something else. And
Yes.
so, true story, I've seen this with my own eyes. When my boyfriend, we've been together for almost 3 years now. Or like 2.5, something like that. So when we first got together, I was kind of just beginning. I was always eating pretty clean. And he was like, he has crazy metabolism. He works out like a crazy person. So he always burns everything off. But he was eating like a 12-year-old. Like I tell him, I was like, your diet is like of a 12-year-old. Like, and he would eat candy and he would eat all these things. And I used to
Mm.
tell him, I said, because your gut bacteria, the trillions of bacteria that you have, are used to this food. So healthy food doesn't taste good to you. And he was like,
Right.
you're crazy. He's like, what are you talking? I was like, you're
Mm.
crazy. Terry, I kid you not. Today, he eats cleaner than I do because slowly but slowly, we have literally transformed his gut bacteria to where he now craves healthy foods and lean like meats and all that. Like, I mean, like quality. He distinguishes between quality food and like just like whatever. It is crazy. I've seen this with my own eyes to where now he questions my ears. Like, I was like, who are you? And that's because he literally transformed his gut
Mhm.
bacteria. He replaced the
Yes.
bacteria that was craving. And explain that to me, because I think that's another thing that we forget about, that it's like you have to give it time because of the gut bacteria. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's so true. So I like to think of the gut microbiome as made up of, it's made up of bacteria and fungi and viruses and parasites, right? But we want to feed the bugs in our gut that actually want the healthy food because those are the ones that are going to take that energy, they're going to make that food into energy, right? But if we're giving our gut refined products, that's going to populate. So those bugs are going to populate, and that's going to drive your cravings to the roof for more of those foods. So you can actually change your gut microbiome within a couple of days by just starting to eat real whole food. It doesn't take a whole long time before that. But the most difficult time is actually like the first 7 days for people, and this is the reason is because people are extremely addicted to these refined sugars and carbs. Sugar is, I've heard, 8 to 10 times more addictive than cocaine. So when we're eating these kinds of, now remember, refined carbs turn to sugar in your body, just like sugar does, right? So refined products like breads and cereals and even oatmeal, is more of a refined product. Especially the instant, like it's totally sugar. So just being aware of those create this addiction component, right? And it drives us because it's constantly um, activating your amygdala, which is then the more reptilian part of your brain. So to calm the amygdala down, we need to stop feeding the amygdala. And then you're able to use more of your prefrontal cortex or the front part of your brain, which is responsible for more logical, decision making, your planning and your decision making. So you'll see nowadays with people who are eating a lot of refined carbs and sugars, they have a hard time stopping because of the addiction component. But being
Mm,
aware of the addiction component and getting rid of that addiction component is so worth it because you're going to have not only better moods, you're going to have a better uh, physical body as well too. Now I do a sugar-free challenge every month. um well, actually the next one is in August, and the people experience such wonderful benefits from getting rid of refined sugars and carbs, things like better mental clarity, no more migraine headaches, no more aches and pains. One of the gals that I had, she said, oh, I don't even feel like I need to go to the chiropractor anymore because I don't have any aches and pains in my body anymore after only 1 month. Okay. So, and this is what I mean. She said, I used to like kind of like cheat a little bit. Like I've tried this before and I'll just, still have a little bit. She goes, but doing this consistently for 1 month, it just changed her. She feels much more optimistic. She now can play on the floor with her grandchildren. And she
mm,
loves doing that, and it's life changing. It really is. And if you haven't done it, it's I would challenge anybody just to do it. See if you can do it for a whole month. Even if you can do it for a week and see how different you're going to feel with your achiness and your mental clarity and your energy level. The energy level is the huge one. A lot of people, when they're going through it, they need a little extra support as far as more magnesium, um, and I even say, like, making sure they get their vitamin D3 and their K2 as a basis, and maybe even some fish oil, but for, helping with the inflammation and just kind of helping with cognitive function. But it's really important to recognize that the foods that are subpar are going to have attacks on your body, and then that spills into relationships, right? Because if we are at work, like I have a story too for you. When I was working as a social worker, I was drinking, this was years ago, those frappuccino drinks, and they were filled with sugar and caffeine. This one time after a meeting, I remember I had responded to something in a not very proud way to somebody. They had, and I don't even remember what it was, but I remember the feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. And I actually ended up apologizing to my coworker for my irritability, my quick response, because it wasn't like mean, but it was just like, no, I could have done better in that interaction. So it was that thing that made me stop drinking the Frappuccino because I'm like, this is not helping me with my
Hmm.
relationships, right?
Yeah.
So, and these relationships just, they spill into not only work, but then your family life too. So it's really important to be aware of the addictions that we have, how we're feeding those, and how, if we want to, we can take away their power so that they don't have that power over us anymore, which is such a liberating feeling. Like I can walk into anywhere and there's desserts everywhere. I don't even want
Yeah.
them anymore. It's like, nope, I get my enjoyment now more out of people. So my nourishment has become, let's enjoy healthy food and healthy conversation. And so that's it's a mindset shift.
Mm.
It's making your priorities different.
Yeah. I really appreciate everything that you're saying, and I think again something that keeps coming to me, and I don't know what it is that happened this year that I'm really thinking a lot about longevity, and maybe because my parents are getting older, and just
Yeah.
observing that we think we have all this time, and we think we're going to sacrifice our health today for our careers or our businesses, but it goes
Hmm.
hand in hand. Like there's got to be, there has to be some prioritization, and everything you've discussed is just like, eliminating coffee or just decreasing caffeine intake, water with a little bit of electrolytes, eating whole foods, making these small choices, getting rid of sugars like processed sugars and all these things. These small things
Yeah.
can have such an impact. And I urge everybody who's listening to just experiment. Don't take our word for it. Listen, I'm
Yeah.
sold on it. I have experienced that. I'm also like you, like I don't really need to have sweets, honestly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I loved coffee, I loved sweets, but I can tell you my performance has increased significantly.
Yes.
And it was so life changing for me, and I was already pretty healthy. Like I was already really active, really healthy. So like I was really
Yeah.
shocked and surprised that it had such an impact. And I wish I would have discovered it early. I was like, oh my God. I was like, this could have been a game changer 5 years ago. It's like, and I think people forget that it's, people might listen and say, well, what is it about sugar and all that? You have to think from a perspective of your body and what's happening inside your body. And we don't think about that. We think about that immediate satisfaction when we eat those foods, or that, the sweets or whatever it is, right? We get that high, but inside your body, something extreme is happening, and your body's processing all these things, and it's working very hard, and you don't feel it, especially if you're in your 30s or 40s and maybe even older. But then eventually in those, mid 40s, 50s, if not before, you start to feel it. And that's because you have worn out your body. Your body has been under chronic stress, working and working. And that's why we have a lot of illnesses that start coming out, a lot of all these things. So, if you're listening to this in your 30s, pause now and reflect on where you are today and do the necessary steps to kind of start moving in that direction. If you're already beyond 40 and 50s and you're already feeling those illnesses, there is a way to reverse that as well. In many cases, there's a way to reverse that,
Mm,
a lot of those things. And I think,
absolutely.
it's we just forget, Terry, like, and I wish, and now,
Mhm.
like, as silly as it sounds, but when I choose my foods, I literally think about my little gut bacteria, and I'm like, what would these little guys like? It sounds stupid, but I think about them now because they're a part of me, and they make me more
Yes.
productive and focused and creative and all these things. And I think when you feel it and you're like, wow, I didn't realize how much better I feel, until I did that. And I was like, I didn't realize that I was operating at a completely not optimal level than I am
Right.
today. So it was just
Yes.
very, yeah. And somebody just commented, they said sugar is very addictive and difficult not to eat. That's exactly what we were just talking about,
Oh,
Terry,
for sure.
and it's just the beginning of it. So that's actually a good point. So if you are somebody who's addicted to sugar and you want to start replacing it, you
Yeah.
mentioned a little bit of vanilla extract, but what for some people it's not going to be enough. So like, is there a
Yeah.
way to substitute with something else? Maybe honey, maybe fruit. Like, what else is there?
Sure. Sure. Yes, I call that the bridge, right? So looking for alternatives. Now, if you can, I always go to the fruit, okay, for the bridge. Like what fruits can you enjoy? Because those are real whole food. What are, like, I love sweet potatoes, or yams, cutting those up, steaming them and putting some olive oil or some butter on that. And then with some cinnamon. Okay. Cinnamon is a nice little, like it gives us food sweet without actually being sweet, and actually it can have properties which will help to reduce the effects of the blood sugar spike too. So that's why I love cinnamon. And vanilla extract is another one. If you want to do a little bit of honey, okay, sure, as a bridge. Monk fruit sweetener or stevia can be very helpful. But other than that, I'm not a big fan of them, over the most of them.
Long term,
Okay,
yeah,
because
no. Mm,
they disrupt the gut microbiome, really. So
yeah.
that's why I like to go for the natural sweet. Like grapes, if you freeze them, they're gonna taste like candy.
Yeah, they're
And
almost
so
too sweet for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But so those bridges, finding the fruits that you enjoy, can be super helpful to get you over. And in fact, I would recommend it if you are gonna go like cold turkey and not have the refined sugar and carbs anymore, because that'll help you to prevent that headache. Because a lot of people will get a headache, maybe even for a couple of days when they just stop cold turkey.
Yeah.
So but it's sugars like in everything. Like 72% I think of our food right now is processed foods, and so all that turns to sugar in the body. And so it's so important to be aware of that being so addictive. And like your commentator said, it is extremely addictive. So giving it up is not an easy thing, which is why if you get partner with somebody to do it,
Hmm.
either somebody that you have a friend, or if you want to seek out a health coach or join some type of challenge, do it with somebody else, because then it kind of creates this competition and accountability, right, piece of it. So that can be very
Yeah.
helpful.
And I again, like I have to go back to guys, like anybody who's listening, like just try it. And I think that once you feel the difference, and it could take you a week, it could take 2 weeks, it depends on where you are. But I mean, once you feel it, you're really not going to need any of those substitutes anymore. Because once you feel a difference, your motivation to actually want to keep doing it is going to increase, and you're going to rewire your gut bacteria. That you're not going to want it. It's just the beginning that's hard, and that's why like joining programs are really good. I know you have a really good program, Terry, and
Yeah.
for me, it was just an awareness. Just taking that test and realizing what wasn't good for my body, like doing the nutritional sensitivities and eliminating. It was like a couple of things I had to eliminate, so it wasn't too much. I
Yeah.
could handle it. Eliminating, I was like, it was like, it was more of like, again, because I'm thinking about longevity, I'm not thinking about how I feel today. Part of it, I would,
Right.
obviously, but it's more of like, I want to be active when I'm 50 and 60 and 70 and hopefully 80,
Mhm.
because I see a lot of clients that I work with and there's a huge difference between somebody who is like takes care of their wellness, the physical health, the mindset, the gut health, versus somebody
Mhm.
who doesn't. There's a day and night difference between a 65-year-old who thinks about these things and a 65-year-old who's never touched it and just kind of live their life as is, right? And sure,
Right.
like genetics play a role, and I hear that feedback a lot. Like genetics play a role, but that's in a very small amount of people. For most of
Mhm.
us, if you can speak to that, like for most of us, it's we could all benefit from some of these things.
Right. So what I've heard is that our was it 2 to 20% of our genetics will actually be expressed, but so we have control over up to potentially 98% of whether or not that gene gets expressed. So for example, if you have a predisposition to obesity, okay, you can do a lot of things to prevent that gene from getting expressed. And, type 2 diabetes is another thing, right? So, if let's just say you have parents who had type 2 diabetes, a lot of people think it's, heredity, it's part of their genetics. It's like, no, you actually have a lot of control over whether or not that gene gets expressed. And that's the field of epigenetics. So, if you're interested in more about that, learn about epigenetics and how that interplays with food and lifestyle. So, um, Yeah, I'm also into longevity for myself. I want to live to at least 100. The human is supposed to live to at least 120 years old. Now, a lot of people
I don't
don't
know if
know
I want to
that.
live that long, Terry. I'm not gonna lie, but I'll meet you at
But
80.
we but we are designed to live that long, and whether or
Yeah.
not you want to personally, that's okay. But my thing is I don't wanna be in a nursing home having
Hmm.
somebody taking care of me when I'm
Yeah.
in my 80s, 90s, 100s. No, thanks. I wanna still have the energy and the vitality to be running around and doing things and having my mind follow because that's the one of the things that I try to convey to people is like, how do you want to spend the rest of your life? How, like, the last 10, 20, 30 years of your life? Like, how do you want that? How do you see that time being spent? Do you see yourself going to have to go to a lot of doctor's appointments because you're not feeling well and taking medication, which again, when you're taking medication, that will just continue to deteriorate your gut lining and create all kinds of problems. Taking medication long term will do those things. So you have to be really conscious about that. Like how do you want your life to live? How do you see your productivity in your 80s, 90s, 100s? Like how do you see that? How do you want to be spending your time when you're retired?
Yeah. And you know what? To that point, it's also about financial health. So you are actually
Yeah.
by doing these small changes today, you're probably saving yourself a lot of money in the future. So that career you're working really hard at right now, that business you're really working hard at, it's better to put that money that you're earning, by working all these hours and stressing about it towards something you're actually going to enjoy versus healthcare. And if you're motivated by money, then that's your motivation. That's like you're going to save a lot of money in the long term for yourself, for your kids, from whoever might be taking care of you in the future. That is a huge piece of it. And we know like money, financial stress is a huge stressor on us. So it's actually a good financial decision, not only for today, but especially for the future. Like, I mean, I know I'm like, preaching to the choir with you here, Terry,
Mhm.
but it's
Sure.
um it's
So true
it's
though.
just it's game changing. Like
It
it's
is.
so simple. It's accessible to everybody. There's you can do all these small changes, and again, from somebody who's already a high performer, my performance really went even higher after I've kind of implemented some of these things. And it hasn't even been that long, so it's game changing. I really hope people take walk away from this and just like have a starting point, or hopefully some we've discussed a lot of practical tips to get started.
Yeah.
I know we're coming up on time in just a few minutes. So if you guys still have questions, like connect with Terry. She's amazing. She runs these programs and does these challenges. So connect with her, have a chat, do your
Absolutely.
research,
Mhm.
you can connect with me for my personal story if you want, kind of what test I took and what helped me and so on. I'm happy to share. And
Mhm.
again, it's, when we talk about careers, it's really about um, being at our top. And that includes mental clarity, that includes our physical health, that includes our relationships, social life that we have, community, support networks, all those things, financial health, and ultimately gut health. And it all starts in the gut if you think about it. There's a huge gut mind connection. So Terry, any last pointers, any last thoughts?
Um, I guess one of the things I'd always be curious when you are having any type of symptoms. Investigate that. Why is that happening? A lot of people just chalk that up to aging. Oh my God, huge mistake. So
Yeah.
if you think, oh, I'm just getting forgetful because, I'm getting older. Do not allow yourself to believe that. No way, Jose.
Yeah.
You can do so much to preserve your memory. In fact, there's a lot of information right now on lion's mane, and I take lion's mane actually to help with brain fog and mental clarity, just to kind of maximize it.
Mhm.
And I love it. I love those kinds of hacks, right? So there's a lot of research out there. If you start, though, noticing any type of ailments, aches and pain, figure out, just be curious about it and do the investigation or talk to somebody who knows about these things, and do not accept, like, even from your provider, your healthcare providers, they're often say, well, you're 80 years old, you should expect that. I'm like, no, no, don't ever buy that kind of stuff. There's
Mm,
always a reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and you can make things better. So I just want
yeah.
your listeners to have hope that no matter what kind of ailment you think you're going to have to deal with the rest of your life, it's it could not be true, you know?
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Just always be curious, always look, for what the root cause is and how to fix it.
Mm. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And again, because of our first conversation when you came on my podcast and we talked about these things, it was one of those things like because I would go to my doctor and like no shame on doctors, like everybody's busy and I get the healthcare situation, but it's your responsibility to get the second opinions and third opinions and go to maybe a little bit more integrative medicine doctors or something a little bit more holistic. And to me, it was like they're
Right.
like, well, no, you're fine. I'm like, I don't feel fine. Like I know myself and I know I'm not at my best. And so that's what made me dig a little bit deeper. And then I did that and I was like, that's what it was. I thought it was crazy. I was like, I know I shouldn't feel X1. I know I shouldn't feel like this. Like I don't
Right.
care what my blood work revealed, but blood doesn't reveal everything as much. So you have to really go, you have to be curious essentially. And you're
Mhm.
right. And I think that we shouldn't outsource our health. And I think that's what we often do. We outsource our health, we outsource our careers, and instead of taking ownership and saying, and educating ourselves and listening to our bodies instead of numbing it with
Right.
painkillers. Because the first thing that they say, well, take an ibuprofen. The minute a doctor says that to me, I'm out. You have already lost my trust because like you didn't even
Yes.
ask me further questions. Like, and I'm the person who never like I have to be in a lot of pain to take it like a ibuprofen, like in a lot of pain, So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's to your point. I think curiosity. If you take away anything, be curious about your own body and listen to it and
Mhm.
pay attention and take a moment. It's telling you something, and we have to be more mindful around just paying attention to the signals that our smart bodies do to help us survive, but we're so disconnected from ourselves that and then we complain about our jobs and all these things. Well, it's probably has to do with your health, so check in with your health before you address all the other areas in your life because it could just be your gut. Literally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It all starts in the gut, like Hippocrates said, right? 4,000 years ago. All disease begins in the gut. So doesn't it make sense to focus on the gut?
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to end this with that quote. I love it. Terry, every time I talk to you, I learn more. And thank you so much for keeping me curious about myself. I hope that people get in touch with you because you've been transforming, honestly. And I want more people to know about the work that you're doing. And I want them to be curious. And I want them to just be better for themselves. And it will improve their performance. It will improve their career prospects. It will improve their businesses. Like
Absolutely.
I'm a living proof of that, really. So yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, feel free to reach out to us and stay connected.
Thank you so much, Elena.